Welcome, baseball fans. It's time for the Running the Bases podcast. I'm Tucker Wells, joined as always by Coach Jordan Bounds. Coach, what a week it's been.
Yeah, what a week it's been.
Yeah, we are going to talk just briefly about the election at the end of the show. So if you've had enough of election talk, and God knows we don't blame you, that'll be at the end. But let's start by the greatness that was the 2016 World Series. The last show we did was right before Game 6. Game 6, Game 7. What a series. It's sadly been overshadowed almost completely at this point. But let's go back. The World Series, the Game 7, start with that. How did you feel watching that game?
Oh, I was just delighted. It was a great game. My son and I have argued whether this was the greatest Game 7 ever. I'll always think the 1960 Game 7 might have been better. And 91. But, I mean, regardless, it was great for baseball.
Yeah, I was really, speechless as I am kind of right now, just thinking back on it.
One of my first reactions to the game was that Madden had to be glad that they voted for Manager of the Year before the series began.
I would have to agree entirely. I mean, he did the best he could, but using Chapman like that for 3 games in a row, can you explain what a total loss of faith that is in your bullpen?
No, I don't necessarily. You go with your best in the series, and we've seen. Was Bochy showing a complete lack of faith in his staff when he pitched Bumgardner every inning a couple of years ago. Raleigh Fingers pitched in 7 games. Eckersley pitched in 6 games. This is not unusual for World Series.
Yeah, but for Madden, who has really built a good bit of his reputation on just knowing his players so well, bringing Lester in a dirty inning, and then the way he took him out, and he seemed to have lost that.
That's true.
So was it just that the moment was bigger than even he could have fathomed?
Oh, it just didn't work out. But in the end, it did, so.
Right. All right, so when it rained, when the rain delay happened, your thoughts at that moment?
That it was going to be a long night. I didn't know that the rain delay would be that short.
Yeah.
It certainly did shift momentum, and the whole thing was great. This is one of those things I don't want to analyze too much. It was just a rewarding escape.
Yeah, and that's what we need baseball for more than anything at this point in time. Finally, though, Jason Hayward, $184 million motivational speaker, worth every penny, right?
Yeah, well, and you know that the Cardinals are probably going to sign Dexter Fowler to this year.
Yeah, Dexter having turned down the qualifying offer,
right.
He will not be coming back on a discount this year. And then for the Cubs, 108 years. Where does baseball go now for the next great story? Is it the Indians now? They're pushing the boulder up the mountain, or are we just going to sit back and enjoy watching how this Cubs potential dynasty plays out?
No, baseball always has stories. Whether it was the 1914 Miracle Braves to, the 91 worst to first, both the Twins and the Braves, the Red Sox, they've been around forever. These stories are always there. The Indians haven't won since 49 or 48.
Right. Going into 2017, what storyline are you going to be most intrigued by, or do you have one in mind that you're looking forward to seeing? Obviously there's a lot going on with our hometown Braves that's intriguing, but
it'll be interesting to see what the new collective bargaining agreement brings.
Yeah, very true. With, in particular, qualifying offers and draft picks, since those assets have become so huge. Well, congratulations to Cubs fans. I mean, enjoy. I mean, I feel so bad for them that they.
Do you hear that?
You know,
I forgot her name. The woman that was 108 years old who last saw. She died today.
oh really?
Yeah, I know.
She's like the last human being alive when the Cubs won it the first time around. No, I didn't.
She was
see
a
that,
Cubs
but...
fan. That was...
Oh well, there you go. Go out on top, I guess. All right, so now we are into the postseason. We're gonna go first to third on some awards and some reactions to some early free agent signings, both of which, most notable, happened with our Braves. But the awards, we are on to the week of the meaningful awards. We have MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, Manager of the Year, and Most Improved Player, Comeback Player of the Year. So let's start with the MVP. Coach, American League, begin with that.
All right. It's going to be Trout, Mookie Betts, or Altuve. Now, the only way I can see it being Trout is in kind of a 1987 Andre Dawson type of thing. I mean, you don't have somebody from a team under 500 win the MVP unless they've had an unbelievable year.
Right.
It's not most outstanding player; it's most valuable player. So, I mean, there could be the argument that Trout should win it every year. Mookie Betts has certainly on a great team, a lot of players on that team. Altuve would be my personal favorite, but I think it should be Mookie Betts.
Right. Do you think that Mookie Betts...
But I do think it will be Mike Trout.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because, for Betts, the biggest thing working against him is so many key contributors on his own team. But he made it as the finalist, so, it speaks better for him. But you think it'll be Trout when it's all said and done anyway?
Yeah, I think it should. I mean, until we redefine it, until if this is most outstanding player, most, valuable, it's hard. I mean, I can't see the Angels having lost that many more games if Trout is gone, so it's hard to say,
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be Altuve. I kind of thought he was my guy throughout the year.
Astros were so up and down. I mean,
That's true. Yeah, they lack the consistency. But
of the three, Mookie is the one that was on a winner, of sorts.
Yeah.
Astros a big disappointment.
Yeah. But they look like they're making some noise in the free agent market and some trades here. We'll get to that. I still hold out on Altuve because of this. The writers, it seems as though baseball is trending towards the Altuve type player, just all around greatness. And since the Astros contended longer than the Angels, that's why I'm going to give it to Altuve. And, Hit King.
All three of those people are pretty much all around players.
Right. You're very true. Good point.
Altuve's in the infield.
Yeah, that's true. But I think that Betts probably lost some votes along the way, and so Trout, the under 500 team. So I think Altuve. And let me ask you about the finalist system because I'm not overly familiar.
By the way, I will remind you that I did choose Betts at the beginning of the year.
You did. You absolutely did. So I owe you a Coke if that comes to pass. All right. So now the National League, not as clouded as the American League MVP, or more so, in your opinion?
Not as clouded, because I really think there are only two contenders, Chris Bryant and Daniel Murphy.
Right.
And I think it should be Bryant.
I do as well.
Corey Seager will get a lot of votes. And, actually, if we're going like with the whole Andre Dawson type of vote again, Arenado should get some votes.
Right.
But
he is not a finalist.
No, but
I think that Chris Bryant wins it over Murphy, even though Murphy had a more prolific hitting year because of his defense and being able
Bryant just played everywhere. I mean, he enabled Madden to be Madden,
And isn't that most valuable?
I think so. I mean, they did win,
They did win. The Cubs did in fact win. It's amazing to be able to say that. All right, so now let's flip over to the I think it'll be Brian as well, so we're in agreement on that. Before we leave, though, the NL MVP, Corey Seager's the Rookie of the Year then.
Yes.
That's with a golden stamp. So We could cross that off. So now to the Cy Young in the American League. Interesting that Zach Britton not a finalist.
And
Is this bullpen backlash?
I really have a hard time. I mean, we've had MVPs that were our Cy Young winners that were relievers in the past.
Sure.
But they threw a lot more innings. I just have a hard time with somebody that's not throwing 80 innings being the Cy Young. Now, they are certainly very impactful innings, difficult innings to pitch, stressful innings, and he is in more games. But, was it Willie Hernandez? How many? He pitched 114 innings or something when he won, or 140 or something. There was a 4 in there somewhere.
Right, and it was triple digits. I'm confident as well. Over 100, whereas Britain did, 53?
Yes. I mean, and it's so I'm not that. I'm okay with Britain. Now, I think Britain was kind of like the 5th choice or so, and that may have been, about appropriate.
Well, and for the Orioles, I mean, are we thinking of Cy Young as the most valuable pitcher in the league, or just the best overall pitcher? I mean, the same argument.
Cy Young has always kind of been like the best pitcher in the league,
right? Because you can argue, and I am right now, that Britain is the reason why the Orioles went to the wild card game, and also the reason that they lost it.
That's true.
Ironically enough.
Tillman had, he had a good impact with them making the All-Star game. Not the All-Star game, making the playoffs.
Right, sure. But, without Britain being locked down towards the end of the year. So, but of the 3 finalists, you have Kluber, you have Porcello, and then surprisingly enough, Verlander. Verlander getting the love. So
I think Verlander deserves to be in there. I really
do as well, yeah.
I know you do.
Yeah, well, a little biased.
I think Kluber should get it. And this puts him as, even prior to the series stuff, this makes him a 2-time winner, and that's elite stuff.
Yeah, and twice in 3 years.
Same thing would be true with Verlander. He would be a 2-time winner as well.
Right, Kluber twice in 3 years, though.
Yeah.
Very, very, very elite company. I too am going to give it to Kluber. And is Rick Porcello the poster child for just how devalued wins have become?
Perhaps.
Yeah, but his ERA is pretty darn good this year as well. Good season by him. But
unbelievable year.
Yeah, and for Verlander, let's go ahead and cross off comeback player of the year for the American League. Seems like that would be a lock as well.
I don't think it is.
All right. Some intrigue still to come on that. All right, and then the National League Cy Young. Here's a great thing. There are World Series players all over these awards.
Sure.
So it seems like we really got a year with the best teams in it at the end. But National League Cy Young, Hendricks and Lester both coming out of the Cubs, and then you Max Scherzer. So who wins it?
I think Scherzer was. I think Lester's going to win it, but I think Scherzer had the best year. I think Jose Fernandez should have been among the finalists.
Yeah. That's a good call. Yeah, I think that's a real good call. And I think that we have a Fernandez Award coming somewhere down the road named after him. So you're saying that you would give it to Scherzer and that Scherzer is going to win?
He held that. No, I think Lester will win, but I think Scherzer should get it because Washington was so broken this year. Scherzer was a horse.
Oh, yeah.
And they rode him the whole way, and they ended up in the playoffs. That's
yeah, and there's a good part of that that's because the Mets were really broken down as well. So
right,
I am gonna say that Lester wins as well, and if Lester and Kluber are the 2 Cy Young Award winners, I think back even more fondly on the World Series that just concluded. Because how often do you see that the 2 Cy Young Award winners squared off in the World Series?
Well, that's true.
I'd have to do some research on that. 95? Probably not. I don't know. All right, so manager of the year. In the American League, Buck Showalter is the finalist. Definitely good for him that they didn't vote post the regular season. Or after the postseason was in the books. We'll go ahead and I don't know. Does he have a reasonable shot of winning? I mean, let's just look at the regular season.
Sure he does, because the voting was done before the playoffs. And everybody knows what he does.
Yeah. And you have Bannister, though, and you have Tito, and I think it's a lock that it's Tito.
I do, too. I mean, you look at how broken they were down the stretch.
Oh, sure.
Their best player and Brantley gone almost the whole year. 2 of their top 3 starting pitchers.
Yeah, and they held off that division pretty well. I mean, the Tigers made a late charge, as did the Royals had a moment where they were coming back in. But the big key is how the Indians' complete dominance of the Tigers throughout the year. So I'm giving it to Tito all the way. And then in the National League, you've got Dusty Baker, Joe Madden, Dave Roberts. The Madden is pretty lucky that they voted on it before the World Series. But given that, you seem to think that it's going to be Dave Roberts.
I'm shocked that the Dodgers were as good as they were with Kershaw out and the turmoil that was on that team. I think he did a wonderful job, and particularly he's also managing under about 10 general managers,
Right.
And that makes it's got to make it more difficult. It's kind of a Walt Weiss type of thing.
Yeah, his job was the most challenging, and really he had to, I guess, walk the finest tightrope to keep that all together.
Right.
Because he was also coming into somewhat of a volatile bullpen with, don't know about Puig. He had to send Puig to the minors.
Right.
It's a great case, and I think he got pretty overlooked in that sense, because I still think it'll be Madden. And Madden, 103 wins, Chicago Cubs. I mean,
it's hard not to give it to him.
Yeah, and the way
the Cubs are going to be awarded.
Yeah, and they were last year, and they're going to be awarded for a while. But Dusty Baker,
I think he did a great job, and I'm not a Dusty Baker fan.
Yeah, and
as a manager,
right? And considering how that team was last year, across the board,
he
great
was
candidates.
the right person for the job.
Yeah, so I think it'll be Madden, but you've stated a great case for Roberts. He should hire you as his agent. Rookie of the Year, National League, Seager,
but we had, Turner and Story, both great rookies. But Seager was,
yeah, and Maeda was fun to watch.
Right.
I think that was I think we both agreed it would be a Dodger, and I think I ended up saying Maeda at the beginning of it. But in the American League, Gary Sanchez is a finalist. How do you feel about that, considering he only played 2 months?
Rookie of the Year is not like Cy Young. Cy Young, you can pitch 60 innings and be a finalist, sometimes, but Rookie of the Year, they don't have any control as to when they come up. And there have been Rookies of the Year who did not play that much of the season. Now, I don't think he stands a chance, but the MLB has to throw Yankees a bone somewhere or another.
Sure.
And I think this may be the bone that they threw the New York Yankees. But and I think Sanchez is going to be a good ball player, but he can't touch Fulmer,
Right.
I think that's as much of a lock as Seager is.
Yeah, and Tyler Naquin, just good job by you.
Nomar Mazara. There have been several good.
Yeah, Gary Sanchez, it'll be interesting to see if he is who we think he is, or if he becomes like Kevin Mass.
Yeah, I know.
So
I think it's Kevin Moss.
Kevin Moss, yeah. Spelled with an A though.
Yeah.
M-A-S. All right, and then finally, we have the comeback player of the year. American League, we're both on the Verlander train, correct?
No, not necessarily. Ian Desmond gives the Rangers the pennant.
That's a good call.
And he was nothing. They got him. He didn't even have a position. And I think you can make a real case for Hanley Ramirez too, who did a lot. I think Chris Tillman of the Orioles. I think there were a lot of bounce back players in the American League. I think I would give it to Desmond. I don't know. See, Verlander in 15, the last half of the season he pitched well, but just kind of bad luck. I mean, so
right.
I think Desmond bounced back further.
Yeah, that's a good call. I think that Verlander, though, had a couple of years struggling, and everybody was just convinced that he had lost it.
He had thrown so many innings and all that stuff.
Yeah, and to come back with, the output that he had this year and the number of strikeouts. So I think that since he won't win the Cy Young, that the vote will go to him for the comeback player of the year. But then in the National League, your thoughts on the National League comeback player of the year?
I think it will it'll come from our division. It'll come from the NL East. I think Ozuna had a real bounce back year, but it's going to be hard to not give it to Jose. I mean, he had 11 starts in 15, but he's close to being a Cy Young candidate. I think Wilson Ramos on the Nats, and as well as Anthony Rendon. The Ramos all of a sudden found his bat again. Rendon is one of these guys that's coming back from injury. Your comeback player is one of the others. And I like to think of the comeback player as somebody who's not just coming back from injury, which eliminates Jose. In which case, we also got to give a little love for Julio. Yeah,
that's true. I mean, he's all-star this year, and, he pitched like we've always said about the Braves of the last 3 or 4 years, they just don't have a number one.
He pitched pretty much like a number one.
Yeah, it really did for the first time in his career. But let's be honest, even more so, shouldn't Schwarber get some sort of that's the comeback of the year?
The voting goes before the playoffs.
I understand that, but I think if you're going to go reopen the ballots and start and tear one of them up, that might be the one, because, I mean, that was incredible.
I don't think we should talk about reopening the ballots.
No, it's hard to talk about awards and voting right now as well. So, but we'll get to that. Am I leaving out any of them that are of significance to you? Any comments on the Gold Glove Award winners or the Silver Slugger Awards? No. You don't think of those as the traditional awards?
No, not really. I mean, I don't know how the voting is done for those anymore. I know that for years, the players chose the Gold Glove winners.
Sure.
And they're generally not the best judges. They would be like, you got to give it to Maddox. He's
right.
He's the Gold Glove every year. And there would be some years where, and Smoltz still burns about this, saying years that he should have got it where Maddox got it. But and the same thing. There were years where Ozzie was not the best shortstop in the National League, but he got it every year just because the players, vote for Ozzie.
Yeah. Well, interesting that Yadier Molina gets Gold Gloves as much as he does, but pretty deserving. I thought of the Silver Slugger Award, the most intriguing position was pitcher in the National League, and it goes to Arrieta over Bumgarner. I wonder how that's going to play out
I don't know.
next year. They're going to mud wrestle for it, or arm wrestle over the top style. All right, so now let's move on to a couple of big, no pun intended, free agent signings. Was Dickey a free agent or a trade? He was free agent.
Yeah, he was a free agent.
All right, so the two free agent signings here in Atlanta, R.A. Dickey and the Tornado, Bartolo Colon. How excited are you to see these two in a Braves uniform in 2017?
I think it'll be fun. I don't think either of them will be real effective, but they both could give us innings. They could be chips come the trade deadline. They will hold down the fort until we bring up some other people. We just signed them for 1 year. So a knuckleball pitcher and a great power hitter. I do think us getting, I said this earlier, I think the Braves getting Bartolo Colon puts so much more pressure on the Mets to sign Cespedes, because now they only, they can't afford to lose both of their great power hitters.
Right. They lost their second most potent power source.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. What a win, and with interdivision as well.
Right. But it'll be fun. It does make me think I should start loosening up the old soup bone because of the age thing here.
Yeah,
I may be a little bit too old. They're youngsters.
Somebody on Facebook, Julia, reminded me that Bartolo is a triple short of the career cycle. So I'll be rooting for that very much so.
That would be a great thing to see.
Yeah, to Julia in Oregon, thank you for that. I'm curious though about if we think that R.A. Dickey, hey, in the tradition of Knucksy, but
the Jays didn't even put him on their playoff roster.
Yeah, is this more about the veteran leadership from him, and and it makes it so that we don't have to pressure the
Ellis
Sean Newcombs.
That they can mature a little bit more. They're not going to be pushed up. Who knows? Whistler or Blair or somebody could force them out of the rotation. Fine. They're a 1-year sign. Neither of them are going to break the bank in today's market. And everything. We might be able to get rid. Braves have done pretty well the last few years of getting something for these over the hill pitchers that they keep signing.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing, and to think that things like the Simmons trade, which was so painful when it happened, it seems to be working out really well. So we'll see. All right, well, free agency, we know it doesn't really start until the winter meetings. That's when the deals start getting done, and it allows for the qualifying offers to be accepted or rejected. Just real quick, judging this year's free agent class against last year's, are we going to see a lot more trades than signings or that are going to be noteworthy?
Oh, we could. I think, particularly because there's so few pitchers that are available, starting pitchers in particular. The White Sox need to. They're not a type of team that really goes on youth movements, but they need to clean house. They need, it's time. I almost used the term. I don't even want to.
Yeah, I understand.
But the White Sox, if Chris Sale goes on the market, what could he bring? This year, and so I think there, and. I think with the retirement of Big Poppy, the Red Sox are going to go out. I think Encarnacion probably ends up there.
Sure.
There are enough hitters around to make their mark.
Right.
But the pitching is just really weak.
Well, and speaking of which, Verlander, early rumors are that he was going to go to Houston. So do you think that comes to pass? Talk about a team that needs to get younger.
Right.
The Detroit Tigers.
Oh, very much so. And they have. I think Verlander will be traded. And good for both parties. I hope he continues to pitch well.
Right, and for maybe a team in better contention status.
Right. Although the Tigers are right there at the end.
They were indeed, yeah.
But I don't see it. They're getting pretty old, long in the tooth.
Yeah, and with Norris and Fulmer now, they're going to have to get paid, and those are young assets. And so, yeah, Verlander seems like you can move him fairly easily, even though he's got an albatross-type contract. What about Miggy? Is Miggy Cabrera really going to get traded from Detroit?
I think it's very possible.
Yeah, he would have to go to a Yankees, right? Isn't that a Yankee move to do?
He is as long in the tooth as he has been. It is hard to say there is a direct line for him.
Sure.
I definitely see him going to an American League team.
Oh yeah, he would. Yeah, the ability to DH is increases his value.
That's the only way he can play a whole season.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, a lot remains to be seen. So coming into home, this was a year unlike any other. And with this election that just happened, you have a lot of division out there in this country. But with that, we look to baseball. I don't know how to even pose this question. I mean, your feelings now that this election has come to pass and thinking about baseball, I mean, what do we do here? What do we do here now? Considering all this hatred and anger that seems to be flowing around there, we come off one of the greatest World Series ever, one of the greatest Game 7s ever, and now this.
Initially, I wanted to just stick my head in a hole, and I think I have the same belief as a lot of people do. Whoever you were voting for, the election was just ugly and awful, and
agreed.
We all wanted to be over, and half the country didn't want it to be over the way it ended up.
Right.
But there have, and I used to watch Morning Joe every morning, MSNBC. As a kind of a political junkie, and I haven't watched it at all since the election. My interests are like I don't want any part of it right now. I've watched more football games in the last few days than I would normally do, and they were awful.
Right.
All the games that I watched were just ugly games, and I've watched a couple more basketball games than I normally would. The diversion, read more.
There you go. Well, here, of course, the North Georgia mountains are burning, raining ash all over the place. So Cubs win the World Series, reality TV stars elected president, and the sky is on fire. It seems pretty clear what's happening.
But as in throughout our history, we have always, in times of crisis, turned to sports, baseball in particular. I mean, look at what Piazza's home run does, after the trade towers
and that World Series post 9/11.
Right.
Yeah.
And look at in the 30s, the turning to baseball after
Great Depression.
After the Depression. Roosevelt keeping baseball afloat during the 40s and having the players march out with bats like they were rifles and stuff.
Sure.
We've always, where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio?
Sure.
A nation turns its lonely eyes to you, and that's what we do as a nation. And that's what I'm doing right now. That's how I'm coping. I'm like forgetting everything else, and like, thank goodness I have baseball. And that's been true for me at depressing parts of my life. Not that but in time, I've always turned to baseball, and that's what I'm doing now.
I as well. And baseball has afforded us so many great moments from this year. It was interesting. As the World Series concluded, and we had that blissful 2 or 3 days where we're just like every baseball fan out there. I mean, the casual baseball fan came back so strongly for this World Series, for this postseason.
Sure, and in part because Tim McCarver's not there anymore, and John Smoltz is.
Yes, right here, John Smoltz. There you have it, the greatest announcer ever. There's that. There's the fact that, the compelling storylines, and, at the end of the World Series, somebody had to lose. But we all could.
Oh, baseball won.
Baseball won, but baseball fans won. I mean, if you're a Cleveland Indians fan, even, you have to just love how the rest of the season played out, except, of course, for the end result. But we all shake hands and say, hey, we'll see you again next year. And,
the ratings are so great. I mean, and the MLB's and the networks belief that you have to have the Yankees or the Red Sox or the Dodgers or the Cardinals in the World Series to have good ratings. Well, that's just not true.
Yeah, not anymore.
It's just not true.
You just have to have exciting teams. You were close there, by the way. The ratings, so great. They're huge. Believe me, they're going to be the greatest World Series ratings ever. But that being said, I thought that it was interesting how the World Series was kind of paralleling the election. You've got the blue team from Chicago, the red team from conservative Cleveland with the racist mascot. The Cubs, it's kind of cuddly on the outside, but if you cross a bear, it'll rip your eyes out. The fact that everyone's like, oh, the Cubs have got it going in. They were supposed to be there, and the Indians were not. And then God intervened with the rain delay. It was like, wow, this is the real predictor for the election, but except for the ending.
Well, you can also turn that around and say, well, the closer with spousal abuse was with your blue team, and
sure.
Your great citizen is with
understood. I mean, even that, like the Cubs essentially haven't won a World Series in a century plus, and a female president has never happened.
Right.
So a lot of parallels there, but I just hope that there was a lot of things churned up in this election that you're right. It just at the end of it was so nasty and so hateful and negative, and I love how positive baseball was this year more than ever, and how everybody saw how great it was to just catch on to this compelling storyline, and pitchers and catchers can't get here soon enough. And we have a World Baseball Classic to look forward to. Team Israel is going to be there, which we're big fans of. So I don't know. We'll press on. Hope springs eternal, right?
There you go.
Maybe it'll turn out. All right. Well, thank you to everyone watching on the YouTube channel, listening to the podcast on iTunes and on SoundCloud. You can find all things Running the Bases at runningthebases.com. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. And we got a lot of free agencies to talk about. So,
we should be going into our analysis of the for the oncoming season for what different teams need in the oncoming weeks.
Yeah, and we got Hall of Fame coming up. That'll be interesting this time around as well, as it typically is. Although they won't have the rock star member like they had this year with King Griffey in the last few years. But anyway, so leave your comments, leave your feedback. Tell us what we're doing well. Tell us what you want us to talk about, and we'll do it right here on the show. So for Coach Bounds, I am Tucker Wells. This is the Running the Bases podcast, coming into home, and we're safe. Coach, you have a good night. Good sir. Go America.